Hi, I'm Dave Henning with the Fresh Start Podcast, fresh ideas for business and personal growth. And today, I've been looking forward to this, Dave. I've got Dave Foster with me from Tampa, and you help listeners understand opportunities within the 1031 exchange, maximize your real estate investment returns with wealth building tax strategies. Dave, thank you for being with me, my friend. Thank you.
Thank you, David. It's awesome to be here. I
And
appreciate the opportunity.
oh, absolutely. I've been looking forward to this a long time. So I love your story that you came out of Denver. I don't know how you sailed a sailboat out of Denver all the way to Florida, but you raised four boys on a boat while investing in properties with a 1031 exchange. Tell us about that.
Yeah, you know what? It's even better than that because if you go a little further back, you you'll learn that I'm from Kansas. My wife is from Minnesota, and we were living in Denver when we decided to become sailors. I don't know where that came from. What in the world? But I think it just falls under the find something that is going to allow you to do what you love and to love what you do, and then find a way to make it happen. Yeah, we were in Denver at the time in some high profile, high pressure careers. And this magical thing happened. We had our first son. And it was like, oh my gosh, what a game changer. The TV went out the window because all you did now was just sit and look at this bundle of joy and just watch him. And we realized at that moment something that I think probably millions of people have realized over the last 2 years. And that is that the greatest commodity in life is not a career, it's not people, it's not money, it's time. Time is what is limited. And so we started thinking, how can we expend ourselves so that we are able to buy as much time as we can with this little bundle of joy and the other three that were soon to follow? And so that's when we started saying, you know what, being in a career where we're chained to a desk isn't going to be it. So, like so many people, we looked around and said, we got to somehow find some way we can afford to live and something we can do that's going to let us afford that. So, for some weird reason, we started looking at boats. We'd never sailed. We didn't have a clue. But I said, a sail, that's wind power. It's got to be cheap. We can do it. So, and then we started saying, well, how can we afford to live on a sailboat? And that's when, like millions of people, we said real estate. Real estate's the way to do it. Historically, 90% of the wealth in the world has all been achieved through real estate and private equity. Nobody works for a living. Very few people work for a living and simply get rich. It's in accumulating assets that work for you. Real estate looked like a great way to do it. So I bought a duplex. I fixed it up. I did the ready, fire, aim approach, and we sold it and made a lot of money until I went to see my accountant, and he reminded me of the silent partner I had in the deal named Uncle Sam. And Uncle Sam did just as well as I did, but he didn't lift a finger. So that kind of put a downer on things. We're going, how can we accelerate this process? This was in the mid-90s, and right at that time, there was a huge court case that had just been settled where the IRS now had to offer this thing called the 1031 real estate exchange to normal mom and pop investors. And what the 1031 exchange allows you to do is sell investment real estate and buy investment real estate and indefinitely defer paying the taxes that you normally would have, which means those tax dollars work for you instead of for the government. You make the money off of it. And then the next year, you make the money off of the money you made off of the taxes. And sooner or later, that becomes what we call compound interest, doesn't it?
I love that. I love the compound interest. That was invented by the famous Albert Einstein.
Albert Einstein was the
Yeah,
famous
Albert.
quote.
I love Albert.
Do you remember the rest of his quote though? Because it's so key. He called it the eighth wonder of the world.
Yes.
And then he said this. He said, those who understand it will benefit from it. Those who don't will pay for it. So whether you're making compound interest or whether you're one of those individuals that has yet to turn around your financial life and you're paying interest rates and paying interest on interest, it's all an effective compound interest. And that's what we decided to harness for ourselves. So from that point forward, we did nothing except purchase investment real estate and then move that successively to Connecticut and then to Florida. And by doing a process called a conversion, where we would occasionally convert a property from investment to our primary residence, we were able to sell those and turn the money from tax deferred into tax free. And it was those tax free dollars that bought the sailboat that we then raised our four boys on for 10 years.
Just curious, where in Kansas were you? I lived in Kansas City on the Kansas side, and went to school on the Missouri side.
I grew up in Manhattan, Kansas, which is pretty much the demilitarized zone for you guys. You were probably a Jayhawk, and I bleed purple and white.
And my other question, when you said ready, fire, aim, I got to see Robert Allen and Mark Victor Hansen in Orlando, and that's his no money down real estate book that I had was Bob Allen, and that was one of his little statements, ready, fire, aim, which, as you experience, is good to get you off your butt to get moving, but then you've got to figure out, man, it would be nice if you had some profits involved here somewhere, which you accomplished with the 1031 exchange model, right?
Well, that's exactly right. Yeah. Following that, we began to do nothing but try to eliminate the tax and turn the tax into tax-free and then use that for our living. And then the rest of that story then is that because it was real estate, because real estate is so easy to manage from long distance, that we had the rest of our portfolio paying for us to live on the sailboat.
Wow.
So it worked out so handily. And since that time, because it had such a huge impact on our life, we began doing it for other people. And so for 20 plus years now, I've been able to help others do it. And it is so fun to watch them achieve the same goals. That's where the real happiness comes.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I have a passion for helping other people, and especially small business owners as well, but anybody in general that I can help along the way. I wrote about a book about the power of encouragement one time, and Amazon blessed me with making it #1 temporarily on Amazon. But let's get back to this sailboat. What did it look like? Where did you go? How did you do that? What the boys think?
Well, the boys today we've still got one in the house, but the rest of them are graduating. They still think of themselves as boat kids. And interestingly enough, there is throughout the Bahamas and the Florida Keys, there are people where they still recognize them as those are those boys from the cookies, because we made it a habit of ours whenever we pulled into an anchorage or a marina, or if we were somewhere and someone new came in, we baked cookies and took them to them. Now, the boys also got to eat a few, so you can imagine they were always on the lookout for new boats, so they got cookies. But it was so funny to have friends of ours run into people in one of the outer islands of the Bahamas and start talking about this family that delivered cookies. Oh, you mean the Fosters? Yeah. So having that shtick, if you will, just that little thing created lifelong friendships.
It's about relationships. It's about relationships. In this case, cookie relationships. So I got to know, Dave, tell me, what kind of cookies were they?
Always chocolate chip or snickerdoodles. Oh. And actually, I think the correct answer is whatever was left that we could get out of the kitchen.
What a fantastic life to give to your boys as well as your family, and utilize this model to help people. And as you said, there's a certain level of gratification when you're helping other investors or people being successful at their investment journey as well. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. it's not so much that I'm anti-government or anti-tax. Justice Leonard Hand was one of the Supreme Court justices who was on the bench when 1031 was legislated back in 1920. And I love his attitude, because the attitude of the court at that time was that everybody should pay their fair share, because we live in a great country and there's things that we have to provide as part of that country. But he said nobody should have to pay 1 penny more. And they are an enforced exaction, not a voluntary contribution. So the attitude is, we need to pay taxes, but not 1 penny more. And so when you look through the code, the tax code exists to not so much to generate money. The tax code exists to encourage behavior. And if you do that behavior, then you are rewarded with paying less taxes. So what's the behavior in the 1031? The behavior is the selling and buying and growth of investment real estate. It's essential for our country that there be a brisk real estate market. It's essential that that real estate keep turning over, because the velocity of the dollar, well, we're starting to get into deep weeds, but the velocity of the dollar is one of the greatest mitigations against inflation. Rather than print $2, have $1 work twice as hard, and you'll eliminate inflation like that. So that's the behavior that the government is trying to encourage. So by helping people harness that, we're doing exactly what the government wants. And the reward for that then is that our clients and myself have more money at the end of the day for us to determine how to grow our portfolios, or for us to determine how to give it. One of my greatest joys in life is giving. But if I have to give to the government, that just does not feel the same. I would rather give to the people that I know can use it and that I run across every day. And so if I'm giving it to the government over here, I choose over here every day. So that's kind of the philosophy.
That is the best explanation I've ever heard about how this makes sense and how this actually works. As you know, I mentioned that I happened to see Mr. Grant Cardone at one of our conventions in Nashville 2 years ago. And of course, he's used this system for himself, and he's trying to help investors now with his little program stuff. But I did want to ask you this. What about this capital gains thing? You know, you buy a house. I have friends that are retired. They live in their house for 30 years, and they've made they can sell it at a profit and put that towards their retirement. But then there's this capital gains thing. What's the deal on that?
Yeah. Well, let's pretend for a minute that your friends live in Cincinnati, Ohio. And the reason is because there's a certain thing that's in their garage that you and I don't know about anymore. It's called a snow shovel.
Right.
So they've got a snow shovel, and every winter it's cold. And they're starting to look towards retirement. So one of the things that they can do is they probably have a couple rental properties or something, but they would use the 1031 exchange to sell those rental properties and purchase, say, a really nice vacation rental in St. Petersburg on the beach. Now, 1031 allows you to sell any type of investment real estate and replace that with any other type. So they're honoring the 1031, and it also allows you to move geographies. So they sell their Ohio properties, they buy rental property in Florida. Now, a year or two has gone by, they're ready to retire. If they sell the property that they're living in as a married couple, they get to take the first $500,000 of profit tax-free. They could do that once every 2 years. Just by living in a property, you can take tax-free dollars every 2 years. That's what we did when we moved from Colorado to Connecticut to Florida. Each time, sold our primary residence, took the $500,000 exemption, tax-free. So when they sell their Ohio property, that money's tax-free. But where are they going to move? I've got a beautiful rental property that I'm deciding to move into. Converting that property from investment into your primary residence does not create a taxable event. You're simply changing the use of it. So $500,000 went in their pocket tax-free. That's a nice start to retirement. And now they're living in a property where there is a bunch of deferred tax, but as long as they live there, they'll never have to pay it.
Basically, what I hear you saying is that really kind of solves this whole big capital gains hit problem that could be not good.
Absolutely. And it's not just the capital gain that you're deferring when you do the 1031, it's also the depreciation recapture. The federal government does this little nasty to us where they pretend to give you a benefit. When you own real estate, you get to pretend that your property devalues by so much every year. And so you get a tax write-off. Well, that's great. Thank you. But when you sell it, you have to pay it back. What kind of a gift is that? When you do a 1031, you get to defer both the capital gain tax and the depreciation recapture. So that tax benefit stays with you. So that by itself is pretty massive. And it's all part, David, of what I like to call the 4Ds of 1031 investing. And they are, if your listeners are there, grab a pencil. You're ready? Here they are. Defer, 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 and die.
Perfect.
Exactly. As long as you have a piece of property you don't sell, you never have to pay tax on it. So you can generate income. And of course, you're going to pay tax on the income. But that's a different story. That's an asset you're not going to pay capital gains on. And it's an asset you're getting the write-off on. As long as anytime you sell a piece of investment property and do a 1031 exchange, you indefinitely defer all of the capital gains and all the depreciation. As long as anytime you convert that property into your primary residence or into any other income producing real estate, you'll never pay the tax. And when you finally die, if you die owning that property under current law, your heirs receive the property as if they paid market value for it on the day you died. So all of that tax, all of that depreciation recapture goes away and your heirs get it tax-free. What an incredible legacy gift that is. All you had to do to get it was hang on to property and die. But okay, we're all going to sometime anyways.
Now let's review that 4D. Defer, 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 die.
Yes. You got it.
Well, let's talk about for a minute overseas investments. I've heard all kinds of stuff like putting together a syndicate for self-directed IRAs and different kinds of ideas for overseas investments. What kind of options would somebody have, let's just say imaginary, for somebody like me living in Costa Rica?
Sure, absolutely. Well, one of the things to just have in your mind to think about this is that the 1031 really acts exactly like your IRA, but it's designed for money that is outside your IRA. Because if you own assets in your IRA, you sell them, you buy them at will, and it's all tax deferred. 1031 allows you to do that with investments and money that are outside your IRA. Same exact principle though. But the problem with 1031, with what we're talking about right now, is that the 1031 exchange only qualifies if you're selling U.S. real estate or the territories of Guam, the U.S. Virgin Islands, and the Northern Marianas Islands. You can sell those. You have to buy in the 50 U.S. states or those territories. So you can't sell in Oregon and buy in the Dominican Republic. You can't sell in the Dominican Republic and buy in Iowa. But you can sell U.S. for U.S. You can sell foreign for foreign. So you could sell in the Dominican, and buy in Costa Rica using a 1031 exchange. Doesn't happen very often, but it's possible. Now, so selling in like anywhere in the US and buying in Costa Rica is not going to work for 1031 or for a syndication as we normally think of them. Because in a syndication, you're usually not buying real estate. You're buying a membership interest in an entity that owns real estate. And the 1031 has to be sale of real estate, purchase of real estate. So typically those two things won't work. But what a lot of my clients will do is they will complete a 1031 exchange. They'll sell a property, they'll position themselves into new real estate, and then they will immediately do a cash out refinance. Now, a cash out refinance is not a taxable event, but they will take that cash and then they will use that to invest in a syndication or to invest in some property in Costa Rica, where now they own real estate. They're getting the benefit of that. And when they sell that, now they can 1031 exchange into other international real estate if they want. So the 1031 followed by the cash out refinance is a huge tool that can be available to you.
So just to clarify my thinking, let me kind of repeat what you said. They can do a cash out refinance on a property in the United States, use the cash to purchase property in a foreign country, and then at that point, they can use the U.S. property for a 1031 exchange in a foreign country? Yes or no?
No, it would still be the U.S. for U.S.
Okay.
But that new property in Costa Rica, they can now start selling that and 1031 into new Costa Rican property.
Oh, really?
Foreign for foreign, U.S. for U.S.
Oh, my goodness. Very interesting. And yeah, as you say that, I do this with people that I invite to join my team is just by virtue of having, if you are a full-time employee somewhere, and just by virtue of having a business of any kind, part-time or whatever, that gives you a different tax code. When you own a business, there's a whole different tax write-off structure. And I'm talking outside of real estate, but just in particular, any kind of a side hustle gig where you're working from home or whatever, it's a different tax structure, which can reduce your tax liability, let's say, maybe even as much as $3,000 to $6,000 a year. I'm not an accountant, but I play one on TV. So I just said a mouthful of nothing. So what am I trying to say?
You know what, though? Take it all the way back to what we said. The tax code exists to encourage behavior. What built this country? It was small businesses. Yes. It was farmers. It was people opening up mechanic shops. And so the tax code, even though it's been monkeyed with a lot, still has opportunities to benefit business owners, because that's the activity that the government wants to encourage. We do need people to work, but business ownership is where it's at. And so that's why the separate rules exist, to encourage that behavior. So yeah, whether you call it the gig economy or the new economy, or whether it's just the age of the entrepreneur, you're absolutely right. There's a lot of benefits to going that way. Plus the fact that you're now working for yourself. You're the captain of your destiny, and you're able to treat your employee, you, the way you want to be treated.
You can sail your own ship. How about that?
There we go. Exactly right.
So what did your parents do for a living?
This is where we don't understand. My dad had one job for 45 years.
Yep.
He was the registrar at Kansas State University.
No kidding.
How in the world did I come from him? I told him I was just making up for it, for all his steadiness.
Well, when I tried my first chance at college in Boston, I didn't last too long up there and went home, worked for the Kodak factory. And there's high school friends of mine that stayed at Kodak. I could have done this if I wasn't such a wanderer all over the country. I have friends that have retired when Kodak still had a pension plan years ago. They stayed 40 years.
Yeah.
That whole model of working and pension funds and stuff is so changed over the years that it's not as secure as people might think it is to have a job job. Wouldn't you agree?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. It's because you employ at will, hire at will. And again, because the tax code benefits the business owner,
Right.
many times the employees get left behind. So you got two choices. You can fight big business or you can become your own business person.
So how can I help you? I know this time flies when you're having fun here. So how can I help you in terms of what you have a website I can show or you have a book to share? How can I help you?
Yeah, absolutely. It's this. I've been out doing this for over 20 years. There was obviously a crash that happened. Remember that? The dark days.
Which one?
And after that, we realized that a lot of campfire knowledge had been lost.
Right.
2/3 of the realtors were no longer in business.
Right.
Lots of the people that I was working with lost everything. You know who didn't lose everything? The people that didn't have to sell. They simply held on to their real estate, trucked right along, and they got a lot more zeros now. So, but a lot of people lost that. And the people who are buying real estate now, at the time of the last heyday, were in middle school. I know. Does that make you and I feel old?
Wow.
So a lot of knowledge was lost. So we created a whole education portal website and that at the1031investor.com. Videos, calculators, articles, access to me and my staff so that we can help you because this is too powerful for people who want to invest in real estate to not do. But they have to learn how to do it. And as you can imagine, if it's letting you keep from paying taxes, the IRS will let you do it, but they're not going to market it for you. So that's our job. Just the1031investor.com.
Okay, great. Awesome. We will be sharing that for sure. And so I always like to ask this question because I'm kind of a wise guy and I ask this. So what was your very first job ever when you were a kid?
Oh, gosh, I remember that like it was yesterday because I just drove my sons by this field in Kansas. My very first job was cutting weeds in a soybean field with a 3-foot-long machete. OSHA was nowhere in sight. And as often as not, we cut ourselves up big time. But I wouldn't trade it for anything.
I love asking this question because I've had the most interesting answers. One young lady, when her mother was in medical school at Stanford, her mother brought her in when she was 12 years old to make handmade Q-tips. I've had all kinds of interesting answers on that. I love that because it's always unique. So you were cutting a soybean field with a machete. Holy cow. Wow. That's interesting for sure. So I appreciate I'm talking with Dave Foster, and it has been not only entertaining, but informative and educational. And I hope that my listeners will take advantage of checking out that website, the1035investor.com. Did I get that?
1031.
Oh,
the
my gosh.
1031.
10:35. That's what time it is.
I thought it was 5 o'clock somewhere.
I love that song too. Thank you, David. A pleasure to have you here today. Thanks so much.
Thank you.